Alright, back on the rally gauge modification. I'm going to start with the speedo first, since that's the one I'm going to have to tear apart. If you notice, and I've tried this a couple of times spinning the dial, it always rests back on this spot on the gauge. You can see there's a small white dot. It rests right on that spot. Well, the vinyl overlay that I'm going to use doesn't have that dot. And I found by the other speedo, when you take this needle off, I was hoping it would be keyed so it only goes on one way. No, it's just a round pin and you push it on. So I don't want to have this thing sitting up here and then, I'm going 50 miles an hour. It says I'm going 100. So I'm going to have to make sure that I line that up in the right spot. And if you notice at the top, the 60 mile an hour mark is actually off center a little bit, and that's the mark I'm going to use to help center it. Now obviously, because of the screw holes and the opening, that's going to put me real close to the mark, but I want to make sure I'm as accurate as possible. So what I've done is I cut exactly with an X-Acto knife tape out to meet this edge, since it's the same on both of them. And then I don't know if you can see it, I put a mark right where the 60 mile per hour mark should be, so that way I'm not kiltered just a little bit one way or the other, because I think there's going to be a little leeway in the hole size and the opening, so I want to make sure that's right. Also down at the bottom here, I also put a mark to indicate where that dot and where the needle is going to lie when I push it back on, so that way I can get it as close as I possibly can. So now it's just a matter of peeling and putting stickers on. So hold on. The first sticker is peeled off. There's the back side. You want to apply soapy water to it. Make sure that this thing can move around so you can have a chance to center it, because as soon as it goes down and you get it applied, it's there and you're not going to get it back up. So let me spray this down. And let's lay this in here. And then move this thing around a little bit so I can get it right where I want it. This probably isn't making for good video, but there we go. Think got this lined up about where I want it. Check the back side, make sure there's no overlay. Looks like the 60 is lining up. Then while it's still wet, you need to use something to squeegee it down. I didn't have a squeegee, but I got this little piece of hard plastic, and it's got a rounded edge so it won't damage the vinyl. So I can kind of use this to push this down, and also to push some of that water out, the soapy water that's underneath. Then you want like a lint-free rag, something to wipe up the excess. Look to make sure I get all my bubbles out. Now once this is done, I may still have to, if I'm really anal about it, have this thing calibrated or recalibrated to make sure that it's absolutely accurate, but we'll see how that goes. I think think that's done. And there is 120 mile per hour speedo with no odometer. So no trip odometer at the bottom, which is what I wanted. And I think that's going to look pretty cool once it goes back in. Anyway, I got a bunch more to do. Stand by. Okay, back to it. While the sticker's drying and setting up, I got to tear the speedo apart to get this face off and then get out the trip odometer wheel and the stupid ugly stick. So this is not for the weak of heart. The pointer was a bear to get out because there's just not enough room to get in with the pry tool and actually get a good flat angle on it and pop it out. So that was a bit precarious. And you're dealing with, this stuff is old, and I was terrified the whole time. So you don't even have a video of that because it was just it was me hemming and hawing and cursing and wondering what I'm doing. So anyway, that popped out. Looked like everything is okay. Nothing broke. Even though I had a second one to be able to use for spares, I didn't want to have to. So anyway, the needle's off, and now you've got two flathead screws that need to come out that hold the face on. So let's get those unscrewed. Those were wicked tight, I'll tell you that. I had to use a bigger flathead that I could fit in here because they're really tiny slots to actually break the screws loose. So what you're seeing is me taking them out real easy. They were kind of locked in there tight. So if you're doing something like this, be prepared for that. So face of the dial comes off. Nice, fresh, clean, stock 120 mile per hour speedo faceplate that is going to get put on the shelf and maybe used for a later project. If I wanted to update an 85 mile an hour speedo, I could do it with that and then have the speedo recalibrated. This plastic metal cover, part of this I used to do the work on the other gauge plate. I actually cut a piece out and then JB welded it to the back. So now you've got this trip odometer wheel and this stupid stick. So you've got, there's a clip, I don't know if you can see that, there's a clip right here that holds the wheel pin in. So we're going to pop this loose, take that out, and then now the wheel can be yanked out. Goodbye. I'm not going to use that anymore. Sit that off to the side. So now you've got this stick. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. There's actually a small key lock under here that needs to be pried out. And there's no way that I'm going to be able to film this without it just being long, slow, and boring. So I'm going to pop this out and then I'll show you what I'm talking about once it's out of here. Alright, so I got that out, and if you can see, it is a small C-clip that fits in behind the shaft on a little groove, and that's what holds the stupid thing in. So now all that's gone. Big empty space, no more trip odometer, no more stupid stick, and I took this off of the trip odometer. This is the plastic I was telling you about on the other one that completely fell apart as soon as I took off the odometer numbers. And actually the whole inside of this cluster seems to be in a lot better shape than the test one I have, and they're both out of 87s, but this one, I mean, I'm actually thinking I'm gonna, I don't know if you can see it, I'm gonna go ahead and take this out and I'm gonna clean all the numbers off. You see I did the 6, and there's a pretty good difference between the 6 and the 7 as far as how it looks. So I think I'm going to just go ahead and remove this, and I'm going to go ahead and clean all these numbers up before I put it back together. May actually put it back to 0, since the entire car is going to be top to bottom new. All I have to do is make that notation of the odometer change on the title. I think we'll be good to go. So I'm going to break for a second. I'm actually going to take it out and clean the numbers off and decide whether I'm going to do that based on how the other plastic looks, and then I'll be back. Okay, so the plastic on the odometer ended up being just as good as the one on the trip odometer here. So I went ahead and rotated the numbers and took the opportunity to use a Q-tip swab and actually clean the numbers off. So it looks a little fresher. The reason that plastic is so important is you have all these small tabs, and that plastic holds them in place, so when it comes time to put it back in, you can get them in the slot that's formed into the back of the Speedo. Now you can see it from this direction. There's a slot in the center, and they all have to ride in a ridge. Well, there's a piece of that ridge that's not there because you need to have the room to be able to slide it in. So that plastic basically holds all these in place, even if that's not there. So luckily the plastic on this was good, and I was able to take it off. It's a lot more flexible. The other Speedo, when I took that apart, plastic, when I pulled it, just literally broke into a bunch of pieces. So that's a lot better. So all I did was got all the pins lined up, and then if you rotate the one pin, it'll actually move the counter next to it, and then you're just rotating it around until you get the numbers lined up to where you want them, and you just go one at a time all the way across, keeping the next set together that you just did, so those alignment stays in. And then you rotate them all into the same position. For this, it ended up being all 5s, because when you put it in, it shows up all 0s on the side where you're actually reading the gauge. So yay, that's done. So now it's just a matter of putting it back together. Because of the piece I JB welded on the back, I actually had to cut out the plastic piece that held the trip odometer and the stick on this side, just to be able to get the thing to work. So I should be able now to put this back together, put the plastic metal bracket back on, and then put this back over, and all my, where am I at? All the screws should line up. Everything works out, and we'll just get these threaded back in and tightened down, and then the only thing that's left is putting the needle on. So while I get this tightened back up, because these screws are a bit stiff going in, I'll be just about done with this. Oh, here's my screwdriver. Yeah, these screws, just the way the metal that it screws down into, these things are really tight. I'm probably going to have to use a larger screwdriver to crank it down to make sure that it's settled, but I want to show you how this needle goes on. So there's this wheel in the back that spins as part of the Speedo, makes the needle move. So I just want to make sure that this is centered up. Got my line marked where I want it. I'm going to press this on gently, and not all the way, so I can make sure that I have this lined up exactly where I want. It looks like the spot. Now I want to see if I can spin this a couple of times, see if it rests back in that same position. No, that's a little off. Okay, that took a little bit of fiddling. I had to do that a couple of times. Figured you didn't want to watch me over and over again trying to get this needle exactly right. But now it bobs and rests right in the marked spot where I had it. So just wanted to make sure that was all correct. And there you go, back together. Nothing but zeros. No more trip odometer. I think that looks kind of good. No kilometer readings. I think it looks a little cleaner. So anyway, so I've got all these other gauges left to do. And if you ever do buy any of these overlay kits from White Gauges, here's the instructions that they send with it. Really detailed instructions, and they're not some generic thing. If you look here, that is a rally cluster from an 80s G-body Oldsmobile, and it is exactly the same stickers they're putting on to show you how the overlays go. So this isn't some generic one instruction sheet fits all. They actually customize these things and tailor them, and they actually show you doing it on that vehicle, which I think is kind of cool. So basically how all these overlays go, you peel it off, and then what you do is, since you can work this back, work the sticker underneath the needle and then move it all the way over to the center pin, and then push it past the point where it hangs over here, and then you center it on, stick it down, and you're good to go. So I've got a bunch of these to do. I'm not going to bore you with doing them. I'm just going to come back and show you what they look like when I'm done. So all the overlays are on. I'll show you this right here. You can see on the overlay I've changed the yellow and red line to a little bit higher, and I asked them to put an Oldsmobile logo in the center right below the 30, and they said, well, it's a trademark thing and we can't do it. So I did it myself. Printed something off and just stuck it on there. So let's see how well that looks when it gets in. But man, right here, it looks pretty daggone good. And I think once you get it behind that glossy cover, it's going to look great. You've already seen this. 120, back to 0, kind of clean looking. And got both of the 2 gauge packs here for volt and oil and temp and fuel. If you'll notice on the fuel, I had them change the writing. So now it reads rocket fuel only instead of unleaded. So I think it's kind of cool. Got that together. Oh, one thing I wanted to show you real quick. Someone's already done this mod on the back of these tachometers, since they put V6s and V8s in these cars, and they put the rally packs in both depending on what box you checked. There would be a plug in the back. Actually, let me show you. Here's the donor gauge pack. You see in the back, see if I can get this up here. In the back, there's actually a plastic pin that you push in one side or the other, depending. There's like 2 slots. Top one would be V6, bottom one V8, and these plastic pins would break, and the metal contact underneath wouldn't work anymore, and then your tachometer wouldn't work right. Well, someone must have had the issue with this one, and what they've done is a common mod where they've actually soldered a piece of wire across the V8 pin in the back. So now it's permanent. No more break, no more problem with your tachometer not reading right on your V8. So anyway, got that done. I'm going to leave it here, and next video we'll get everything back together. I'll show you how I polish the clear cover on it, and I've also got to install the low fuel light and solder the wires in the back, and I'll show you what connections those go to make that work. Anyway, that's it for now. See ya.